If you're setting up a database type list, you absolutely must consider the possibility of accuracy in that list. And there's no greater tool for this than data validation. It's a feature found on the Data tab in the ribbon. Let's imagine that we're about to set up a list here comprised of these fields, and we want to make sure that certain kinds of bad data do not enter. If you want more information on the possibilities of data validation, be sure to take a look at the lynda.com course on data validation. Let's focus first of all on the salary column and imagine that within this list we know ahead of time right now the salary range for all employees, and it will stay that way for a while at least, will be from $40,000 to $130,000 for this particular list. And we want to make sure that no data entries occur here outside of that range. We're trying to cover possibly malicious data entry or more likely just typos. So we want to make sure that in column E, we have no numbers outside that range. Many, many times when you're setting up data validation, you'll want to do it for the entire column, although you can certainly do it for cells, and in some cases, different scenario perhaps, cells that cross multiple rows and columns. But in this case, column E, and simply from the Data tab, Data Validation, let's restrict these entries to either whole numbers or decimals. Say whole number would make sense here possibly. And we can put it in a range between, upper, lower, whatever. In this case, how about a minimum of 40,000, and then tab, and here 130,000. And you might want to provide an input message to go along with this, a pop-up box. And if so, fine, just simple, straightforward, must be between, and the appropriate range that you've got here. Click OK. So there's our pop-up tip. And of course, we'll put in a standard entry that works just fine. And then another entry that exceeds the limit, perhaps. Maybe it's a typo, whatever. And we get the message. There's the ability to customize this message too. We won't need to go there necessarily. But if we click retry, it lets us edit it. And we could do it that way, possibly, or cancel just to start all over again. Maybe that should have been 127 there, which is acceptable based on our rules. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward for this kind of a scenario. The showpiece of data validation, the real strength, is the feature that allows us to not do any typing at all. In fact, it forces us to not type, but to make selections. Off to the right are 3 different lists, one for building, one for department, one for status. And let's imagine for these 3 kinds of fields, we've got our lists already set up. These are the only entries we want to allow. Now, when you are setting up this feature, it's good to have these visible and nearby, but eventually what we would do with these is put them on another sheet perhaps, or hide the columns, different scenarios as to what you might want to do there. If you do put them on another sheet, you could hide the sheet and even protect the workbook so that others couldn't get to them. But you should not leave them nearby so that people might be tempted to change them. But for now, that's just fine. Let's focus on building. We don't want anybody typing anything. There are only 6 possibilities right now. Let's make sure the entries in column B depend upon what we are currently seeing in column J. Data tab, data validation, and the option now under settings is allow list. Click in the source panel right here. You don't need to collapse the dialog box. Just go out and highlight the appropriate cells, these right here. And click OK. And now as we use the arrows here, we pick from the list. We don't need to type anything. If your hands are on the keyboard, you can press Alt down arrow. There's the list. Use the arrow keys to select the one you want. Press Enter, and off we go. So either way. Now, at a later time, there's a new building on campus. We're going to add that building at the bottom here, Kenton. And as you might expect, if we go to the list over here to the left, we will not see that there. However, rather than trying to redefine the list, why don't we just drag this word Kenton with the Shift key and put it above one of the others. Put it above the South building like that, using the Shift key, let go of the mouse. Now it's available in the list. On the other hand, if you say, well, it should be at the bottom of the list, let's just take South and drag it upward with the Shift key. Fine. And now as we click over here, Kenton is at the bottom of the list, and so on. So you can easily add names that way. Now, the real time saver, of course, will be in a field like department. And of course, we would make the column wider here. But look at how much time is going to be saved if we don't have to type entries like the ones we're seeing here. And no misspellings here. A ton of time is going to be saved. And furthermore, they're going to be standardized. And if at a later time you somehow want to match up data in different worksheets and you're trying to match up department names and one person has spelled them one way and somebody else has misspelled them a different way, it's going to be tough to make that all work. So let's force people to choose from the list. And here's something you might recognize ahead of time. This list is alphabetized. We haven't yet seen a list that's more than 8 entries, but if there are more than 8, there will be a scroll bar. And so the idea is we should be able to find our entry pretty quickly here if it's alphabetized, as this list is. If you know ahead of time maybe that 20 or 25% of the people are going to be in this large operations department, you might want to put that list at the top. So let's drag this upward with the Shift key if we happen to know that, and we'll put it at the top of the list. So in column C, we'll do this over again. Data validation, this time allow list. Click on the source panel, and let's go highlight those cells starting in cell K2 downward. There we are. And OK. And so as we click an entry here, operations is used frequently. We don't have to scroll to get to it. It's right there. Click it. And we'll see it often, let's say. But as we need to find others, they're alphabetized, so we'll find them pretty quickly. And we've saved a lot of typing time along the way. There's no question as to the value of this feature, and it really enforces the idea that you want your data to be accurate from the beginning. And that's the great strength of this. And similarly, we would do the same sort of thing with status. After setting these all up, it's a good idea. And the environments will be different, of course, as to where you're using these. In some cases, maybe all you need to do is to hide the columns. It's probably not the best thing to do, but other people might simply move this way off to the right and hide the columns. Maybe better yet, put this on an empty sheet or a blank sheet. And if you're still concerned about people altering the content of these lists, if you do put this on another sheet, you could hide the sheet. That might be good enough. And if it's not, you can go one step further and actually go to the review tab and protect the workbook so that people can't unhide it. Again, different levels of security out there, but the main idea here we're getting across is that you can really facilitate data entry, build these lists quickly by not having people need to type anything in columns like here. And again, you enforce not only that aspect of it, but you save a ton of time in data entry. So these are great tools for setting up a database.